Hey guys, and welcome to my review for Reichbusters Project Vril by Mythic Games. This is a Weird War II style game where you take a group of commandos and you infiltrate a castle not called Wolfenstein to fight some Nazis. What more fun could there be? Well, I don't know. Let's find out in a discussion now. But what does it do? That's a great question. Now, to find out, you get your handy dandy rulebook and you look it up. I really enjoyed it, and it just sucks. As always, I'd like to start out by thanking my patrons and YouTube members. Without their support, many of these videos, both the quantity and the quality, would not be possible. So thank you so much to them. Thank you to all of you for being here and watching, especially if you're one that comments or likes or subscribes, pauses that ad blocker, uses the Amazon link, whatever it might be that you do to just kind of help pitch in a tiny little bit. Trust me, it's appreciated. And even if you don't do any of those, I'm happy you're here. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to do a quick overview, very high level, very rapid fire of the game so you get kind of the basic concepts, the basic puzzle pieces that fit together. And then for more nuanced discussion, I'll bring it up as it's applicable throughout the review. Additionally, the review is going to be structured where I'm going to go kind of through the same path, the same timeline that you would with the game. So I want to start with component quality, then go to rulebook, and then finally gameplay details. So there's a timestamp there to skip the overview if you aren't interested in that, but otherwise let's go ahead and get started. So in Project Vril, you control one of 4 commandos. You get to pick them. They are all fairly unique in the cards that they have. More on that in a moment. Really what you're going to be doing on your turn after you choose who goes when is you're going to be doing 2 actions. Perhaps that's a move. That's 1 action. Perhaps it's going to open a door. That's 2 actions. That's your 2 actions. So you might think, well, so all you can do is maybe open a door and move in. How is that exciting? Well, it's because you have these cards. These action cards are actually quite cool and full of actions. So you're going to have 2 special ones, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, and then a whole bunch of these other kinds. And a lot of these, you'll notice they do stuff like, say, move 1 and draw 1. So if you wanted to move and draw, well, that doesn't have to take up one of your actions now. Or maybe you can make a +1 ranged attack. Well, now guess what? You did an attack. Or maybe for your 2 actions, you did an attack, and then you played this card and did a 3rd attack. So this is how you expand the 2. The 2 really are a base, and there are times where you're just going to be doing 2 actions. When you do that, though, you still get to keep drawing cards, and eventually you're building up a hand that then you can do a lot more actions as you see fit. As you move around, you're going to be noticing that there are these white die here, and that is the noise die here. And so if Red Hawk here wants to open this door, she can open that door, no problem with an action, but she's going to have to roll 2 noise dice. So she's going to roll those and get 3 in a blank. If you rolled nothing, you're done. If you rolled a value, though, you're going to have to draw from one of 2 decks, either this deck for pre-alarm, more on that later, or this deck from post-alarm. Let's say she drew from the pre-alarm. You're always going to do this top part, whatever it might be. This one, in this case, I'd have to discard a card. If you break the value here, if you meet or exceed this, then you're going to do the bottom part here. Normally, this means you spawn a patrol. What is a patrol? A patrol are these little symbols here, and there's ranks 1s, 2s, and 3s. They don't really do much of anything. They can either be suspicious or hostile. Suspicious, again, they don't do much. If they're hostile, though, well, that means that they're going to start moving around, and they're going to start actually trying to kind of see what's going on. Once they have line of sight, you're going to draw a spawn card, and then spawn what the spawn says. That's based off of this card here. There's a different one for each mission or raid. And here, it'll say, A is an officer, so if you had A and D, you'd do an officer and a dog, and you'd spawn that, and this is the max amount and kind of their stats here. Additionally, they'll have this here with their stats spelled out more in detail. So then at some point, you're going to want to attack them. Now, you could use some items, and there's 4 item slots here. Then you'll have 2 weapons and some special abilities. These are all keyword based. When you attack, you're going to be rolling these black die. They're 0 blanks through 3, and then a special star symbol. That star symbol can do different things depending on your stats and what you're doing. Every now and then when you're attacking, you might get a Vril die, which is again 0 through 3, and then a special one, plus a surge. A surge can hurt you, it can benefit, it just kind of depends on what's going on, but for the most part, you don't want a surge. Eventually, sometimes you will be attacked, in which case you're going to be rolling defense die. The same thing applies here. Now, there's a lot of other various rules about being captured and guard points and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not going to get into that. The last thing I really wanted to note here is that there is a pre-alarm and post-alarm phase. The noise here will just kind of increase every round, essentially. There's some actions that can increase it, but for the most part, noise doesn't really do that. Noise will spawn patrols, which slow you down, which means this will move more. Now, eventually, again, this will go into post-alarm. Once in post-alarm, everybody turns hostile, which means everybody's moving around the board, and it also means that you can no longer control who goes when. So things become much harder then. So the goal is to do as much as you can in the objective right here, pre-alarm. Eventually, you're going to go in the entrance and you're going to exit. Now, again, once that post-alarm happens, you'll have spawn points where enemies spawn in and they keep coming in, and it gets worse and worse for the heroes. So this is kind of a time tracker more than anything else. With that, let's get into the review. Okay, I'm going to start out with the box itself and really once you open it up and unpack everything. Now, the first thing you're going to notice is that the component quality is very, very nice. It's actually quite premium feeling. Now, it's not perfect and it's not super high-end, but it is actually quite good. All the miniatures are quite well detailed and they look nice. They're fairly dynamic poses, and so it's kind of nice to see them. A lot of them actually have multiple parts to them, and they're all assembled quite well. The cardstock is actually quite nice, and it's not the best, but it's actually pretty darn good, and I have no complaints over the component quality. These trays are nice. They have these nice little divots where you can push in to kind of get your piece out easily, which is nice. The cards themselves, they're not really doing a lot of shuffling, but they're fairly okay. You do have a hand, so you're holding them somewhat. And really, even the dice here are quite good. The paint inside can get chipped and isn't necessarily the best, but the die themselves are nice and rounded. They got some good color to them, and they look nice. I'm happy with them. Again, in general, the component quality is definitely a positive. You won't really have many complaints here about the components themselves. Now, the storage of them is really bad, though. The consumer storage is abysmal. What you do is you have a spot for all of these miniatures, and they look, these miniatures are nice, right? However, that's it. All you do is you get storage for miniatures. Everything else is tough luck. So all of these tokens, and there are a ton of tokens. Trust me, I do not have them all here, but there are a ton of these. All of these tokens and all of these cards, and trust me, there's a ton of cards, have nowhere to go. So you can just kind of shove them wherever you can. Currently, I'm using both the stretch goal box and the current box to store it. In fact, here's a picture of my current storage solution for the core box. And as you can see, the dice are just loose in there. I don't have a bag for them really, and they don't provide any bags. The tiles are just kind of set there. All the tokens are shoved into the side on top of each other. All of the cards are in the stretch goal box. And again, the problem here is there's barely enough room to hold the cards from all the expansions in there. And it's not the expansions are adding a whole lot. So it's just barely enough to hold all the cards. And especially with bags, that's not going to happen. Or if you sleeved them, it'd be even worse. And if you take the miniature boxes out, the cards just fall everywhere. This happened to me when I went to film these beautiful miniatures at the end of my unboxing. So when I went and did that, I took the box out and the cards just fell everywhere because there's nowhere to put them. They don't even pretend to offer a spot for these cards. It's not a good storage solution and definitely needs to improve in the future. All right, next up we have the Rulebook, and well, it's not good. It shares a lot of the same problems that they had with Joan of Arc. And so far, they're kind of 0-2 when it comes to their printed material. There's just a lot of problems here, to the point where if this was their senior project and they turned this in to their college professor, they would have not passed this class. They would have had to repeat the grade. I would never have been able to submit anything with this many errors in it. And this is actually slightly better than Joan of Arc, though that is a very low bar to pass there. But seriously, it has a lot of problems. So let's go ahead and get into it. First, the translation's actually good. Like, I don't have a problem with translation. It reads well enough. The problem is just fundamentally everything else. So they have an iconography thing here. And in fact, they have some player aids, and those are nice, though. I mean, I struggle to give that as a positive thing because I feel that's expected. It's more like a negative if you don't have it. It'd be like shipping an item without a rule book. It's like, well, of course you have that, especially with a game this advanced with this many things to remember. So they have that, but they do not have an index. And here's my problem with that and why I always point that out. An index is the single most useful tool a consumer can have when they're playing your game, much more than even a player aid. Mainly because at some point, invariably, you're going to say, you know what, let me look that up in the rule book. I think I remember, but I don't quite. Or maybe I just don't recall. You know, how does this surge work? I just rolled a surge for the first time. How does that work? Let me go find that. An index in alphabetical order, where it would have said surge and tell me exactly what pages that is on, is fantastic and so useful. And you won't find that here. So there's no index. There's nothing there to look in. So you're just busy kind of looking through there. And to add to that problem is some of the rules are in the mission book. So sometimes you're going to go in there like, oh, it's actually in here where they talk about that. So if you wanted to know about setting up the heroes, the setting up of the heroes is in the mission book, not the rule book. So you'll never learn in the rule book how to set up heroes and what that all involves. Oh, and or the map or anything like that, purchasing skills. All of this is in the mission book, and so if you thought maybe it was in the rule book, well, you're wrong. I can't flip that page for the life of me. Okay, so that's that, and I'll get into that again real soon here. The rule book, however, has a few other problems. So, for instance, let's say I wanted to learn. Okay, what does it mean by adjacent? I just said adjacent. Well, again, in an index, it'd be right there under the ADs, right? It'll be very soon, right up top, and I'd be able to tell. Instead, I have to kind of look. And I'm going to look for adjacent here. And you know what? I don't see adjacent here. It's not in alphabetical order. Maybe it's in here. I'm just not seeing it right now. I'm actually looking. I don't think I see adjacent here at all, however, because this is not even a very detailed table of contents. In fact, this is super high level, so none of the sub points are even here. The reason I mention adjacent is because I know where it is. And it's all the way over here on the next page here on page 13. Notice it's a header, but it's still not in that table of contents even. Here's adjacent. On page 13, it's telling you about what an area is, or what a room and corridor is, or what adjacent means. All of these, the 12 pages beforehand, mention these. They mention areas dozens of times. Like literally, area is mentioned a ton. It's not defined until here. Not only that, but these are fundamental rules. And then here you'll learn about capturing a hero. This is so niche. It's never happened to me. I've never once had a person captured in my play sessions yet. So you're learning all this super detailed stuff here about, whether or not captures or how you go about, reshuffling a card deck after you go all the way through it. And then you learn about what adjacent is over here. This should never be what you learn first. This is just a kind of a poor layout. So reading this for the first half of it, you're just kind of confused. It's not really explaining a whole lot, especially around, like, for instance, movement. When it's explaining movement, what you might not realize is that movement is tile-based. So this is movement. This is all the same move. This is the same move, but not this because this is a different area, but you don't learn that yet. And so you're seeing these examples where you're moving and it's a 1, 2, okay, and then 3, and then suddenly it's 4, 5, and how the difference is there and all that. It's not a good learning tool. And if your rule book is not a good learning tool, then what is its purpose? It's not, in fact, it's even worse. Not only is it not a good learning tool, but it's not a good lookup tool because you lack the index. So it's not good to look up and it's not good to learn. You deal with it as best you can, but in general, it's just kind of cruddy. In fact, the component list is in the back, which I also thought was kind of odd. It's good that it shows the images and the name. I actually really appreciate that. That's very nice. What I don't appreciate is that it's kind of in the back. So if you want to talk to me about, the mission tracker or the spawn tokens or a guard point, and I don't see the image, if you didn't show the image here, I don't know about it until I finally read all the way until the component list. And then I can see, oh, that's what you meant by that. So I eventually, because I'd leafed through this in my unboxing, I knew this was here, and I was kind of flipping back and forth. But, I mean, really, it's kind of a bummer that this is in the back. Again, it just kind of is unfortunate. Now, to make this even worse, I know this is, I don't like dogging so much on something, but this is a problem. I'm actually going to not be able to flip this. I'm going to talk about these tiles later, right? But notice each one of these has a unique description on it. So it starts there on these items, and then it keeps going all the way to here. Now, Here are the keywords and skills. Now again, keywords is a loose term here. For instance, you won't find adjacent here. So if you're looking for adjacent as a keyword, it's not here, it's in the rulebook. However, if you were wanting to learn about barracks, it's not there, it's here. Or if you were wanting to learn about how to escort is a keyword, adjacent is not. There's no rhyme or reason to this, but this is rules. This is not defining a word here. This is game mechanics on how you escort somebody here in the keywords section. And so here's guard point, where it's finally talking about guard point here. It had mentioned guard point several times here. You're at page 29 before it finally tells you what a guard point is, because it's a keyword. But again, I don't know how they decide what is and isn't. If you want to learn about suppressed, guess what? It's all the way over here on the last page. You won't find that under attack or under, enemy movement or anything like that. Like, none of that is there. So it just, it's a mess. It's disorganized. It's not useful. It doesn't do its job. This is rough. Okay, there's more bad news. The printed material stuff, again, of Mythic games so far has been really bad. Joan of Arc was borderline unplayable. It told you wrong components. It told you wrong tiles. It fundamentally messed up the map layout. They had to do erratas right off the bat and FAQs and all of that. And honestly, this isn't that much better. Luckily, the game itself isn't as affected by it, but it's still a problem. So we're going to go over here, and what you'll find out is that sometimes when they show a room, right, it doesn't work. So you'll see a room and the layout is incorrect. It's impossible to do it. They somehow flipped it in Photoshop or whatever. They obviously put this together without the actual components here. This is something you notice right away with blind testing that just didn't happen. They printed these and then shipped it and never actually tested it out, because they would have seen right away that these tiles don't always match what you have. So you kind of have to do a best bet. Now, for the most part, that doesn't affect it, because there are rarely more than one room. Sometimes there's two, sometimes there are 3 areas, and that layout can change things, but it's not major. But it's just kind of a lack of finesse. And then there's even other problems here. So here's mission 1, and you'll see that right here, you should have some cages here. Now, if, and this fell, if you have O'Reilly, which at this point, none of us bought this retail, and again, he's in the core box, then you'll have this mission. It says, hey, guess what? You should place his token here, right there, right? And so you have this card. Sorry, not a token, a card. You have this card right here, and you have to go and break him out to get him. And so you flip his card and it says, spawn him, and then you go out and you exit with him, and then you can do his mission. Now, his mission here, this is kind of the mission layout, has you using that card, which makes no sense. This says, hey, O'Reilly is there, yet O'Reilly has to be in your party entering here because you're going through and trying to find like his old teammates or whatever. It's amateur. It's not professional. And you see this kind of stuff all the time, and it's just really, really unfortunate. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned or not, but he is a Kickstarter exclusive character, yet he is in the core box, but just as miniature. His cards are in the stretch goal box. It makes no sense to me. And again, it's just one of those things where they put him in the core box, but then his cards are not even in the same box as him. All the others are, but his is not. It just kind of, I don't know, it's just, again, it's that amateur kind of non-professional, they didn't cross the T's and dot all the I's. Additionally, you have some items that are in French. You have some, instead of English, on the English ones, you have on the starting here, their weapons, and some people have the wrong name here. Like, this art doesn't match. So you can find the weapon, but it doesn't have the same name, or you can find the name, and it doesn't have the same weapon. And so you're trying to figure that out. It's really unfortunate that they didn't spend an extra month, a minimum, just to kind of put this all together, like print it all out and try it out as a cohesive whole before sending the files to print and doing all of that. Because once it's printed, I get it, they're committed, but it sucks for the consumer experience to see something this disjointed, this, I guess just, nothing's working together here. The mission book doesn't work well with the rule book, which doesn't work well with you playing it, which doesn't work well with the tiles and stuff like that. It's really kind of a bummer. All right, now for something that I really, really like, though. So let's go and change this up a bit. As you're going to be playing, you're going to be playing through this campaign, and that kind of gets you set up for raid missions, which are kind of randomly generated stuff. The mission book, has some issues. However, the structure of the campaign is quite good. Now, it is very difficult to find this out, right? If you were just to read this, it doesn't mention anything. Instead, you kind of have to go through here. But I talked about how you do this after mission 2 or mission 1. So you play mission 1, then you play this stretch goal mission, and then you go to mission 3, then you would go to mission 4, and so on and so forth. But every now and then, all the expansions, whether it's the Alien 51 kind of expansion, Not of This Earth, or Project X, or whatever it might be, those are inserted into the missions. So you're going to go missions 3, 4, 5, 6. However, you're going to be going on these kind of side expansion missions in between, and that just flows really well. I love that it's integrated. A lot of times, this is just the 6 missions. That's what you do. Then you play the expansions, and those are all separate. Instead, they're all integrated into the core thing, and I actually really like that. Additionally, and it doesn't tell you this kind of ahead of time, which again is kind of odd. In fact, it was a little confusing at first because you just kind of have your 4 characters available at the start. Then you unlock O'Reilly afterwards. And then you'll notice on 3, all uncaptured heroes are now available. So suddenly now the stretch goal characters are available. And then, of course, now here you can actually purchase Vril skills and stuff like that. So as you're going through this, where it makes sense in the story and kind of what you're doing there, you're going around and actually using all of these expansions and stretch goal characters in a very cool and interesting way. And I actually really, really like how that was done. Another one of the cool things here is there are different difficulties you can pick, and one of the difficulties has a Perma Death option where if one of your characters is captured and you leave, they're gone and you can no longer play them again. And it's kind of like an XCOM thing, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. I think it was super awesome just to get that feel of like, oh my gosh, this person, we were going through whatever, and then, oh no, we had to leave him behind, and so now he's gone. Obviously, it never happened to me, though I didn't save scum like I normally do in like an XCOM video game or something like that. But in general, just the idea that these characters, if you left them behind, were gone forever and you'd have to pick another one. And that you had kind of this pool of people to pick from. So it might not have been your biggest pick, but it's your best person you have now, was super cool. Additionally, even one lower than that, they still can have these injuries that follow them around. And so maybe you don't want to actually use them because of the injuries they have, and so you end up swapping to another character and just kind of retire that character. It was just very nice to have those options, and I thought they were very cool rules. Okay, so there's kind of the campaign structure, and as you can tell, I like all of that a lot. Now, when you're actually playing the game, there are some fundamental issues here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and spoil this ahead of time just before I get into this. I like playing this game. It's enjoyable, and I've had fun with it to the point where I've kept playing it. With that out of the way, some negativity. The noise rolls are the worst part of this game, and here's why. You will be doing a noise roll more than anything else in the game. This is your main interaction of this game. More than moving, more than doing anything, you will be rolling these noise tokens because everything requires it. If you want to pick up any item anywhere, if you want to pick up any loot, if you want to open a chest kind of thing, if you want to pick up an objective, you will be rolling these noise tokens. If you want to open a door, you will always be using these noise tokens. If you want to use a lot of your abilities, you will be rolling these noise tokens. And it just doesn't stop. It's all, no matter what, almost every action you do, you seem to be rolling noise. So it's do an action, roll noise, do an action, roll noise, do an action, roll noise. You will roll these multiple times every turn, all the time. So it is by far the most important thing to get right. If as a player, I'm doing that more than anything else, that means it better be great, right? Well, it's not. And let me explain why. So you roll the dice, and let's say it's 2 or whatever, and you got 4, and then you draw the, okay, look at that. So you add 2 to your total. So you add 2, and then you follow it. Okay, so now I'm at 5, and then it says, you made a room suspicious. Now, that nearest non-suspicious room suspicious might not matter. But either way, all you did was you rolled it, and then you had to roll it again, so now you've done even more of this, and, you made a room suspicious. Or sometimes it says, the nearest suspicious room is hostile. If there's no suspicious room, you just ignore it. It didn't do anything. None of these noise is actually making the alarm move, really. All they really do, for the most part, is make an enemy patrol appear, which just slows you down. And that's That's only if you get to this bottom part here, which is only maybe 40% of the time. That's me being generous. For the most part, the roll doesn't matter. You roll, you do something, you might be affected by it. You might have no effect. You might have to add 2. A lot of them are add 2, right? A lot of them are like add 1 or re-roll 1. And so all this is trying to get you to break that. And if you don't break it, which we rarely did, it doesn't matter. So you're wasting your time. You're rolling these dice for nothing. You're rolling this dice and it says, oh, add 2. Okay, add 2. Nothing still happened. All I got was 3. It doesn't matter. The thing said 5. Why did I do those 2 actions? And then I have to do another action. So I'm going to play a card. Oh, I'm going to roll again. And then a lot of times it'll just be 1. And rolling a 1 is almost pointless. I've never had a 1 actually affect me in a negative way. If I've ever seen anything that said roll 1, at this point when I'm playing, I ignore it. I don't even do it. It's not worth it. It's just a waste of my time and everybody else's at the table to roll the die, to draw the card, to then see if I did anything. Normally it says to re-roll the die. So re-roll the die. Still nothing happened. Why did I do that? And it happens all the time. It's just kind of an annoyance. I mean, it's all these 1 doors. I just open them. It doesn't matter. Just make it a basic action. That's fine. Take up one of my actions, but don't make me roll these dice, especially 1. What does it matter? Oh no, I rolled 1. Now I have to draw it. Discard a card. Okay, well, I'll discard a card. Trust me, you won't be hurting for cards. I can use the next action to draw 2 or something like that. And again, that's almost a worst case scenario. Normally you draw 1 and it's even, it just doesn't matter. It's a re-roll 1 non-1. Okay, all right, let's do that. Oh, I got a 2. Still didn't matter. Well, maybe if I had rolled another one, it would have been a 3. Still wouldn't have mattered because I had 1 plus 2. So it's rough. It's rough, and it just sucks that you do it so much. I mean, literally every game session, you're going to be doing that what feels like 100 times. I've never actually counted, but between the rerolls and adding the dice and doing it for everything, you do it multiple times every turn, and it just sucks. Now, additionally, I kind of wanted to point out that, and I don't mean to mention another game here, but a lot of people saw that there's a noise, something called noise here, and something called noise in the Wolfenstein game, but they act so differently. This is not a noise system. The noise you make doesn't actually make the alarm go up. It doesn't make people react differently to you. In fact, it's kind of disjointed in a way that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So let's say you're running loud or whatever. Maybe you're telling somebody to do something as Sarge. So you have to roll the die, and normally the thing that happens is you discard a card, which doesn't make any sense. There's no thematic thing from losing a card from talking, right? That's an arbitrary game mechanism, not tied to theme. Or you spawn another patrol, so suddenly there are more patrols here. Now, maybe there were just more people, but why did me talking have more people be there? I don't know. Now, they're supposed to be appearing and coming kind of towards you. It would make, I think, more sense perhaps if one of the closest patrols already there did that. However, because then at least it's like, oh, they heard you and they're coming, instead of a one randomly appears, which is normally the case where you talk and then somebody walks through a door, and that's typically what happens. Or you ran and then somebody walks through the door at that moment. And that's really the only 2 things that really happen. Either you're discarding a card, or somebody randomly walks through a door because you, I guess, rummage the room a little bit loud. I don't know. It just doesn't really feel like a noise thing. And in fact, this tracker doesn't really, this is just a turn tracker. All it means is this is round 1, round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, round 6, round 7, round 8. You have 8 rounds to win. Now, there are a few things where you'll have and I don't know if he has a loud, he's pretty quiet, a bang, kind of attack where something is loud, like you throw a grenade or something like that. And all that does is steal one of the rounds from you. Essentially, you're using a whole round of heroes to do it, because what it'll do is it'll jump it up 1. That's really all that means. It doesn't make anybody react. So you could throw a grenade and nobody cares except you did that. That's all that happens from that grenade, is you lose a turn. It doesn't actually, if you're right here and you throw a grenade in here, this guy, whoever is in there, doesn't care. They don't hear that grenade go off with that bazooka. You could shoot a rocket launcher and nobody reacts. It just is, it doesn't make any sense to me. It seems like it's the most involved game mechanism of this entire game, and it makes no sense. It's disjointed, it doesn't work well, and it's largely useless. If you want a turn tracker, that's fine. I'm all for a turn tracker, but just leave it as that and have me not roll constantly. Or especially do a random roll to then do a random draw. This kind of random on random, this is double random. There's a double random effect here, and that's just rough. Okay, next let's talk a little bit about loot, because this kind of ties in with all that. Now, first of all, okay, so my problem with loot is you just leave it on the floor. So a lot of times you're going to end up where either there's loot here all around, right, or there's loot that drops from the enemies, and you're not going to pick it up because it's kind of a bummer. First of all, you can only hold 4. So you can only have 4 items. Once you have 4 items, that's it. You may as well not pick up anything else. You'd have to kind of figure it out right then and there. Additionally, it kind of costs double because it costs an action point, which you don't have a lot of, especially because most of your cards for most of the characters here aren't going to be having it to where you can loot them. So it has to be one of the 2. And additionally, you have to roll noise for it. And trust me when I say that nothing you pick up is worth an entire patrol showing up. It's just not worth it. So for the most part, you're gonna try and get some until you have the 4 you have, and then that's it. Once you have the 4 you have and you're happy with them, unless you really need another item, you're just gonna kind of ignore it, and so you're gonna leave a whole bunch of loot untouched on the ground. If I was to play this mission right now, I would not be touching that or that or that or anything like that. It just kind of is unfortunate, but it's not worth it. Now, in subsequent playthroughs, I've made it to where you don't do the noise die. It just costs a basic action. It still kind of sucks, but at that point, at least it's just an action, and so that's the only cost to me. And there's no chance of a whole patrol showing up because I wanted to loot something that I probably don't even want or could use. Maybe it's a dog biscuit on a map that doesn't even have dogs or something like that. Speaking of these tiles, and I said this about Limbo as well, and I don't know why they... Okay, so the tiles are crappy. And what I mean by that is, this is your tiles, and the problem is that they're single-sided because, well, they're supposed to be on this side, and you're not supposed to see this side. When you're taking them out, I can't help but see that this is a bulletproof vest, and here's a dog biscuit, and keys, and a helmet, and some smoke screen, and all that. All that's just showing. Now I can start flipping those over, right? So I gotta flip them all over, so I'll do that, and I'll put them all down. Right, so I'll see that flipped over. So now those are keys, and here's another helmet, and here's an armor-piercing round. And okay, so now I finally have that, but I know what some of these are. Like I know this armor-piercing, so now I'm gonna have to mix it up a little bit and try and forget that this is an armor-piercing round. And then what I typically do is I try to stack it like this, and then try and do that. Do you see? I shouldn't have to do this. This is dumb. It sucks. Well, you know what would have been better is just to draw it out of a bag, if nothing else, right? To just have this be just a symbol saying this is just a loot token, and then I get to draw an actual token out. So that sucks. I dislike the single-sided loot token because it's hard to keep it a secret. It's hard not to know, especially when you have mission objectives or something like that. It's just it just sucks because you invariably end up seeing some, and then you have to try and make yourself forget that you saw it. Additionally, the token symbology just sucks. And what I mean by that is, like, if you look at this dog biscuit here, what do you think this does? You can't tell. You want to know why you can't tell? Because it's just a picture of a dog biscuit. It says how long it lasts and that it costs no noise. But what does it do? That's a great question. Now, to find out, you get your handy dandy rulebook and you look it up. So let's see what the dog thing does. What does the dog thing do here? Dog biscuit. Discard this item to cancel the attacks of all dogs. Experiment 6 XXs in General Wolf in the same area until the end of the turn. I'd have to do that for every single item here. I picked up an item. Okay, let's go look what it is. I picked up an item. Okay, let's look at what it is. Because it's hard to tell what it does when it's this tiny token. You know what these should have been is what most other games do, especially if the tokens are this advanced or they have all these rules and they make them a card. Because guess what? All of this could have been printed on a card. You could have had a keys on a card. And guess what? On the card, you could have printed this. And then I'll have to look it up. If all we're having is 4 items anyway, it's not that hard to keep 4 items. If you're already having me keep these in a hand, what's the problem about having 4 cards next to a player board? So many other games do this, and then you could just print it there. This is inherently inefficient. It's difficult for me to randomize. It's difficult for me to have to flip them all over. Trust me, when you have to set mission tokens and it says do 3 wrong and 1 checkbox, you then have to flip them all over to see them, and then you finally find the checkbox in 3, and then you have to flip them all back and then pretend you forgot and then try and randomly do it. To the point where I had other people, I would do it, and then I'd leave the room and say, go place these somewhere so that I didn't know. Because it's just, Why? I don't understand why. Why not a card? If this has meaning to it beyond just a picture of a dog biscuit, then put it on a card where I can see it. It's just 4. I could stack 4 here, no problem. I would love to have some cards for this. I didn't mean to hit that. I'm sorry. Get a little worked up here. I hate these tokens. And it sucks to stack them. It sucks to store them. It sucks to place them. It sucks to use them. And it sucks to figure out how to do it. It just sucks. Okay, so here is a problem that I have. In fact, here we go. Here is Red Hawk. Red Hawk was a person I was using quite early on. Now, there was a room, one of these tile things, and my first mission that allowed me to make any of my weapons a Vril item, which means I add these red dye here. That's super cool. Now her sniper rifle is better, and it rolls 2 red dye. The problem comes when you roll these red dye, and you get the surge token. What this does is not only does it hurt you, but it jams your weapon to where you can't use your weapon again unless you get rid of it. Now, normally, on a non-Vril weapon, you just use an action. Okay, fine, you're done, and now you can use your weapon again. With a Vril item, you can't do it unless you get an orb, and these orbs are ones. Let's see if I even have one. I don't know. Here's an orb right here. I looked out here. About half of these, this one at least, is an orb. So that means that you randomly have an option to get an orb, and you have to use an item. You can only hold 4. It takes an action plus a noise roll to even get this. And once you do it, that's 1 single reload. You have to do the action still, plus get rid of this. And then if you attack again, and you got it again, guess what? It's right back there. I hope you have another orb. Farming these makes farming food and Tainted Grail look like child's play. This is dumb. This is way too costly. If I had known that it gets to the point where I'll typically walk with 1, maybe 2 orbs, but half the time I end up using that because I roll these stupid Vril tokens. I don't have an option. I have to roll them, even if I don't want to, which means I end up with a weapon I can't use. It may as well go away. I just have a knife now because I only have 2 weapons and I can't change this. This is my gear. I'm stuck with the gear I have. It's not like you loot gear. You don't get other gear. And I can't flip it back. So I'm stuck. On the first mission, I gimped my character when I didn't even mean to. Trust me, if you play this game, don't Vril your items. Just don't do it. And then you can just ignore this crap. You'll do better in the mission, trust me. There are plenty of cards that increase your die total to where you'll do fine. You don't need the Vril increase. It's not worth it. And you'll actually do better because you won't waste time trying to loot those and trying to use those just to unjam your weapon. It's dumb. I hate it. This sucks. It's just not worth it. The fact that it's so hard just to use your weapon, and so then you end up, like I said, you end up may as well be like that. This is now your turn. You just have a knife. My sniper chick doesn't have a sniper rifle half the time because it's all jammed. It may as well not be there. It's a really bad mechanic, and I actively dislike it. I kind of like the idea of getting hurt and it being more powerful, and if all this did was hurt you, I almost think that would be enough. If it's just, hey, every now and then you're going to get wounded from from just attacking, that's pretty hardcore, but I got a buff. That's pretty cool. But it's, oh no, not only did you get hurt, but also you've made it to where for the rest of the mission, all you have is a knife. And considering, again, you're so tied to your cards and most of her cards are ranged, she's just kind of screwed. She can't use half of her cards because she can't use a ranged attack. If you ever have this where you can't use that weapon, she is a crappy character and you may as well get rid of her, which means I got rid of her. Why use her if she's going to stuck like that? I can't fix her. I can't change that weapon. I could fake the rules, I guess, but I shouldn't have to. Okay, I know that was a lot of activity, so let's go ahead and talk about some awesomeness. Let's go ahead and actually take her card deck, because I do like her card deck. Now, again, I'm not sure there's a character that doesn't have at least 1 or 2 or 3 cards that were misprinted that need to be changed. If you check out the errata or the FAQs or whatever people have been trying to compose together and Mythic Games has been trying to get out there, you'll know that some of these cards are wrong, apparently. Though this is what shipped with the games, this is what I got, until they send me other ones. Anyway, this action card system is fantastic and I love it. This is fundamentally one of the best game decisions I can think of. And I really, really like it. And literally, this is the reason I keep playing this game. Trust me, it's not because of the awesome rulebook. It's not because of the awesome Vril weapons. It's not because of the awesome noise tests. It's because of these action cards. This, fundamentally, I love. I will compare it a little bit to Conan. So in Conan, you have the river system where you have the gems, and you can either use a few of them and have these small turns, Or you can save them up and have this big one in this huge turn where you just killed everybody and you feel awesome. And for a Conan game, that makes sense. As some elite commandos killing mindless Nazis, same kind of thing happens. So you're going to end up getting a lot of these where you just kind of, maybe you have this one and maybe you have this one. And then let's say you have, this is worth her special. Come on. I'm not seeing it. Did I already pick it? Oh, I already picked it. Okay, well, let's say that one as well. Okay, so let's say you do this, you open this, and you're going to spawn these guys. There's a whole bunch of guys in this room. Perhaps it's even a 3-room. So there's a ton of guys here. And you're only down to 1 action, right? Maybe you moved for free and then you open the door. The door was already open or whatever. Either way, but let's say you have these cards. So you can do something like, first of all, you can just do this, Bird of Prey. You're going to have to roll dice again. I know it's terrible. But you get to move 1 for free, and then you make a +1 armor pierced lethal ranged attack. Bam, you just get to attack. Maybe it's the other one that I meant. But there's one, covering fire. You have to do a bang, so you're going to lose a round. But you make a ranged attack on each enemy unit within range in one direction. If you fail to wound any target units, covering fire ends. So you get to keep attacking everybody until everybody's dead or you miss. So if you don't miss, you just killed everybody in that. But you can combine these and have these huge turns where you can, again, move 1, make a +1 attack, or make up to 2 lethal ranged attacks, or in either order, you can move 1 and make an attack. So maybe after range, she then moves in 1 and knifes him, especially if she, can't use her ranged weapon anymore. Stuff like that's awesome. And then you can also accentuate it in another one. So maybe I'm using this one and it says, hey, it stops when you miss. Well, I get to reroll all blank results if I play this. So you end up to a point where at sometimes you're playing 8 of these cards. And it just feels awesome to do. You feel so powerful and so strong and such a commando when that happens. It's fantastic because you'll just wipe out a whole room and all this loot will be there and you'll feel great. It feels good. You are definitely kind of overpowered in this game for the most part. Most things only die from 1 wound anyway. All you gotta do is hit them. Bam, you did it, and it's good. Additionally, the combat works pretty well because there's no defense roll for the enemies, so you just attack. If you beat the number, you won. Another positive I wanted to point out about these decks is that each one can feel fairly unique. It's not that each one necessarily does, but that there is variety. So you have the damage dealers, you have the silent people, you have O'Reilly that's using Vril dice and is able to heal his wounds and use those. You have Sarge that can buff other people and command other people. So if you're playing a Sarge, all his cards are helping the whole team to get a free movement in or do stuff like that. And you just feel like this kind of support character that can still deal some damage. Whereas if it's Quentin, you kind of feel like this silent assassin kind of dude versus her who's just shooting everybody and or him that's just clubbing people to death. So there is some great feel there, and it's actually really nice. Now there is one negative I have, and I guess I hate fake variety. And what I mean by that is you have these 2 cards here, and that changes a lot, and then you have a kind of a set of cards here, but that set might have a lot of overlap where it's just kind of fake. So for instance, you have Quentin's what? Right? So it's all titled uniquely, and it has this picture here and it says, play after an enemy unit enters your tile, move 1, make an attack. Then you have Red Hawk's Assassin. It's a different name. Is it different? No. Play after an enemy enters your unit enters your tile, move 1, make an attack. Or maybe it's Quincy's Resistance Fighter. Again, it sounds unique, right? It's not. Play after an enemy unit enters your tile, move 1, make an attack. It's the same card. They did the same card 3 different times. Now, it's not quite the same, because if you notice here, these are exact carbon copies, top and bottom. In fact, they didn't even bother with the renaming the concentrate. This one at least is paired with a slightly different one of Advance, but in general, you're going to see a lot of repeats as you change characters. The 2 is unique, and sometimes the whole deck feels fairly like Sarge's is kind of focused on something, O'Reilly's is kind of focused on something. These happen to be all damage dealers, and so as damage dealers, they tend to kind of have some commonality here. So in general, the game revolves around routine disposal of enemies where you're just kind of, typically you spawn them, you kill them in that same round, they never even touch you. That's why I kind of jokingly said sometimes you're going to roll the defense die. It's not actually, I mean, it happens, but not as much as you would think. For the most part, you're pretty efficient at killing these Nazis. And then you have these huge epic turns where you rain death upon your enemies thanks to these action cards. And that is the kicker. These action cards where you're just kind of routinely opening the door, kill those, move in, loot the objective, move again, and you're just kind of sweeping through tactically like that. And then you have these huge moves where suddenly you're just clearing out whole areas of this building. And then you kind of get to your objective and you complete it. And honestly, I like it. It's a lot of fun. I know I complain about these little things, and trust me, it is almost a death by paper cuts, but I don't quite die from the paper cuts. Fundamentally, all the nitpicking aside, it's just fun to move around, open it, spawn the Nazis, shoot them to death, keep going. These action cards are great. They are very pleasant to use. Which is a very major part of the game, and kind of high level, that's what it is. It's mired by these noise dice. I've already been house ruling these by quite a lot. And once you house rule these to mostly just be an action thing, and I'd love to get it to the point perhaps where certain actions you draw the card and you do the top, or certain actions you draw the card, you do the top and bottom. And sometimes you just don't even draw at all and it's just ignored. Like for instance, the one just open the door. It's fine. Just use an action. That's not worth spawning a patrol over that. But I've been kind of playing around with that house rule wise, but otherwise, yeah, the game's a lot of fun and I like it for the most part, but it is certainly not perfect. It definitely needs a 1.8. I would say, because most of the printed material, from the wrong tokens to the mission layout to the rulebook layout to the rulebook itself to the it just needs to be rewritten. Pretty much everything needs to be reprinted and then kind of packaged in a little bit nicer deal. And they need to get rid of a mechanic if it's the biggest mechanic you ever interact with that isn't absolutely fantastic. Make this absolutely fantastic one the biggest interaction point, not the noise rules. All right, that's it for me, guys. I hope you enjoyed my review. I know it's a little lengthy. I know I'm detailed. I literally know no other way of reviewing a game. I want to tell you guys all the little details and what my thought is so that you can make a better decision for yourself on what you think. If you've played this game, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I know it's been getting a lot of flack. I think it's still a pretty fun game. It's not the best game ever, but it is fun and I've enjoyed it. And it does kind of have that romp through the castle killing things kind of style, similar to maybe Massive Darkness, another imperfect game that still was fairly fun. So if you liked Massive Darkness, you might like this. It gives you the same kind of power feel where you're just going around and killing Nazis and taking their names, I guess. Anyway, guys, that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you again very soon for my Shield review, so be on the lookout for that.